Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna report. And with that, I will call to order the Wednesday, April 20th meeting of the Sugar Falls Board of Education. Ashley, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Rose.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel. Here. Mrs. Garvey. Here. Mrs. Miller. Here. Dr. Schlepper.
Here.
Would you all please join me to face the flag and say the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I turn the meeting over to Lauren to introduce our showcase for the evening, not Lauren, Robert, sorry. I just got back from being out of town, so I have an excuse. Has everybody who wants to speak tonight signed up on the sign-up sheet? Okay, great. Robert, would you please introduce our showcase for the evening?
All righty. So we're going to be introducing some of our students for the showcase of the Gurney Gardens. So the Gurney Gardens include 6 indoor tower gardens, 5 outdoor raised box garden beds, a courtyard with beds designed for a butterfly garden, and even more fruits and vegetables, as well as assorted annuals and perennials that thrive in the specific sun and shade areas that we have here at Gurney. Mrs. Albrecht and Mrs. Gooden have passionately driven the development and now the integration of these gardens for the whole school community. They will be giving us a snapshot of the development of Gurney Gardens and many of the curricular connections therein. Our 3rd graders will be sharing the value that they found in the garden club, garden camp, and even a special math class project. My own daughter will be starting here at Gurney in August, and I'm very excited about the programming that Gurney offers in this regard. Being an avid gardener myself, I love that students have access to outdoor educational experiences and the interdisciplinary approach that this environment provides. As we know, outdoor education can refresh instructional practices, it can bolster student engagement, and foster a deeper sense of community. Multiple studies have shown that students that learn outdoors develop a stronger sense of self, better problem-solving skills, empathy toward others, motor skills, self-discipline, and initiative. So with the leadership of Dr. Jones, our principal, Mrs. Julie Albrecht, our 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Sandra Gooden, our 3rd grade teacher, and our 3rd grade students that are representing, again, the Gurney Garden Club, the Gurney Garden Camp, and the Gurney Garden Court. So let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Dr. Schlepper. Thank you to the board and Dr. Kazarski for inviting us to share tonight. And thank you to the community for being here. Mrs. Albrecht and I are pretty passionate about gardening at Gurney, so we feel especially lucky that we get to share that passion with you tonight. Before we go into it, I'd like to introduce some amazing, courageous 3rd graders. Actually, I'm going to introduce themselves. Come on.
Tyler Johnson, and I am Mrs. Gooden's class. And I'm in Mrs. Gooden's class. I'm Sarah Benson, and I'm in Mr. Jones' class. Hi, my name is Stuart Gordon, and I'm in Mrs. Gooden's class. Hi, my name is Heather Perkins, and I'm in Mrs. Gordon's class. Hi, my name is Evan Lynn, and I'm in Mrs. Gordon's class. We're excited to tell you about the Gurney.
So I would like you to imagine for a moment what it might feel like and sound like in a classroom. The teacher says, we are going to take this learning outside. And if you heard lots of loud cheers in your head, and if you felt a surge of excitement, then you have pretty much hit the nail on the head. So what we love about outdoor learning and the Gooden Gardens in particular is that they help students who are excited and engaged actually learn about the very standards we'd like them to master. So as some examples, I would like to show you in what the standards look like and how, oops, sorry, I'm learning this. Okay, so here's some ways that the Gurney Garden really connects to some of the Ohio State learning standards. In science, students in grades K to 4 are really asked to develop certain abilities. For example, they need to be able to observe and ask questions about their natural environment. They need to be able to use tools and measure and take data. And they're also asked to communicate their observations and the things they have learned. The Gurney Garden really connects kids to an experiential experience, meeting all of these abilities. We also found at Gurney that there are a lot of connections from the garden to the actual grade level learning standards. So I'm briefly going to highlight a few of those. Kindergarten, I'd probably highlight the life cycle of a butterfly. Students are able to observe that, and it's actually happening in their natural environment. First grade, weather changes, sun as a source of energy, and just understanding the basic needs of a living plant. In second grade, students get to talk about weather, how it impacts plants. They are looking at how the environmental changes are affecting living things. And in third grade, we study the life cycle of a plant. Students will have an opportunity to see this happening in real time and also be able to compare life cycles of different plants to each other. The bottom box really, I find important, that it's not just about science. These gardens really connect to learning all the way across the curriculum, and we'll highlight that a little bit in our presentation tonight. So, how did we get here, and what are these gardens? Well, that part of the story I'm going to turn over to my friend, Mrs. Albright. You're welcome. You can click on it. Oh, I'll click. Yeah, you can click on it. Let you click. Yes, so this actually began back in 2016 when I wrote a grant for Tower Gardens for Gurney, and I was really excited for the students to be able to plant indoors and have them in our classrooms so that they can watch. We were able to measure, we were talking about different things we were able to do beyond just the life cycle. Kids were able to measure and keep journals. That was when we first got our Chromebooks. And then we always finished with a salad party, and the kids just loved it. And we actually can get some health and nutrition curriculum there as well. And then shortly after that, we realized that not only can we do fruits and vegetables, we can also grow flowers. So we started planting some flowers in the Tower Garden right around this time that we were able to take outside and plant outside Gurney to give it a little extra something outside and for them to enjoy. In 2019, I learned about an opportunity, a grant opportunity through an organization called Captain Planet. And I wrote a grant, and I got it. And Rachel was very excited. And that is the raised beds you were talking about. But it also included a garden cart, tools for kids, like gloves for kids, a fully equipped mobile cooking cart, which we really utilized in summer camp and garden club. And there's online training for teachers, as well as some incredible standard aligned lessons for teachers to peruse. So our goal after meeting with and planning was the spring of 2020. And we all know what that means, so we stopped there. And then so we decided fall of 2020, we could be outside still with our masks and being careful. We started the courtyard transformation. Take a moment to notice what it looks like. Yeah, so like the saying is, many hands make light work. We gathered up some PTO and community volunteers to help us get started on the courtyard project. It was great. We had people of all ages from all over the community to help us.
getting started, getting those weeds out, getting new soil. We got some donations from Lowe's Greenhouse and Sugar and Pet and Garden. And this is what the finished product. And it was great learning space for all. Kids are out there observing and reading, and it's just a beautiful space, and we're excited to get our second spring going. Well, that was only the first phase of the project. We still had to get our raised beds going. So then in the spring of last year, 2021, we got our fencing, irrigation, and raised beds going. And again, having to get some great volunteers. We had some of our Dad's Club, our PTO, and another grant from the Ed Foundation. So again, some great hours put in, but the finished product was great. And it was kind of fun for some people to really get to know each other when we were doing this. A year ago in May, we had our grand opening. And at the grand opening, we had our sponsors, Heinen's, Captain Planet, and Dole were there, as well as Sugar and Pet and Garden and Lowe's. We had some representatives come, as well as the mayor. And these are some of the speakers we had and some of the things we did on the grand opening. And then we were ready. We were ready to start learning and growing with our gardens. And we're gonna let the kids tell you a little bit about their experience.
One exciting thing we saw in the garden was the butterfly life cycle. We saw the caterpillar, then the chrysalis, and finally the butterfly. In STEM class, kids observed and drew the stages of a flower. In the winter, the courtyard was turned into a winter wonderland with decorations and lights. Everyone in Gurney got to estimate how many lights were used. By the way, there were 1,610 lights. Garden Club connected to our One District, One Book courage. This video will show you how.
My name is Stone. Here's the garden club. A part of our garden patch is growing pumpkins and gourds. Just like Spookily, there are many different kinds of pumpkins and gourds. And just like Spookily, they are each special in their own way. For the month of October, we want to help you remember to do this. We are inviting your class to come take your classroom. Here is what you can do. First, come outside with your class and take a look at all the pumpkins and gourds. Choose one and have your teacher. When you get back to your classroom, you can decorate your spooky and give it a name. Share it on Twitter so we can all enjoy the different pumpkins and gourds. Have a lot of fun in the garden and
We'd been doing a lot of story problems in Mrs. Gooden's math class, and then she gave us a real problem. The tables near the Gurney garden were not good for outdoor learning. She told us that we would get new tables so that kids could get fresh air while learning. At first, we were all uncertain and confused, but soon we were all very excited for the important project. Mrs. Gooden gave all of the students a blank grant. All of the kids were unsure what a grant was. After a minute, Mrs. Gooden explained what a grant was. She said that it was basically a request for money to have a change done to the school. All the kids were excited to do a real-life story problem. We realized we had to find the perimeter of the courtyard. First, we borrowed a measuring wheel from Mr. Carlson, our school's custodian. Then we went outside to the courtyard and measured each side. We went back into the classroom and built the courtyard to scale according to the side lengths. A couple days later, we found the area of the courtyard to find out how much space we had.
Then we went down to the office to find the websites we could look on for the tables. We could not find tables that looked good for the courtyard when we looked. Dr. Jones came in and gave us different websites and other information about writing a grant. We looked for a while. We finally found the perfect table.
One of the first things we figured out was that we shouldn't have holes in the tables and instead to get smooth surfaces. The reason for this decision was that if a student were to go and write on the tables, their pencil would go right through the paper, unlike our smooth desks in class. One of the many decisions we had to make was should we have umbrellas? There are many pros and cons. One pro was that if it was sunny, we would not be so hot. Also, a con was where we put them in the winter. We finally decided there are more pros than cons, so we hope to have umbrellas.
While in the process of finding tables, we needed to decide whether we wanted square or round tables. At first, we thought that a round table would be a good idea because everyone would be able to see the teacher and there would be a better chance of an umbrella hole being pre-drilled into the table. But after a couple of days, we decided that a square table would be a better choice since it would be easier to fit papers on the surface. After we found the table we wanted, we realized that we needed to find the total cost of all the tables we would need so that we would know how much money to request. So we multiplied the amount of money for one table by how many tables we might need in the courtyard. After we found the final cost of all the tables, we split up into groups to write the different parts of the grant, and Mrs. Gooden typed it out.
We hope we get the grant.
I was in the Gurney Garden Club. Some things I enjoyed about Garden Club was planting bulbs, making salsa, and making self-watering oregano. Something I learned was about all the different kinds of bulbs. I also loved our field trip to Lowe's greenhouse. We got to pick out plants and replant them so we could take them home. Garden Club was very fun.
Went to summer garden camp. Something I enjoyed in gardening camp was planting flowers, harvesting vegetables, and making a self-watering basil plant. Something we made was homemade butter and all different kinds of food. Something I learned was how to make paper, homemade paper. Everything about summer garden camp is educated and fun. I encourage everyone to do it. Summer garden camp makes learning fun. Here's a picture of some of the things that we did at garden camp. We harvested for the first time, and these are some of the vegetables that we harvested. I can't wait for garden camp this summer.
And as we like to say, if they grow it, they will eat it.
Thank you for listening to our presentation. You are always welcome to come to our amazing garden.
So I want to say one thing before they're done. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. Truly, it's been quite a few years actually, but back in the day, since I've been here quite a while, we used to present at a board meeting at least once a year to highlight a program in our schools. And doing this just reminded me of how special that was for a group of students and their parents to be able to present to the board. So I really appreciate you bringing back this opportunity. I think it's important and it's part of the educational experience as well. I have to tell you, close your eyes and imagine what it sounds like when some Gurney teachers find out that they've gotten a grant and then another grant and that they can do things outside and create gardens. It's pretty much like what you envisioned at the start of the presentation when you tell children they get to go outside and learn. I just want to say these two teachers are so passionate. It's an understatement about outdoor learning and gardening and everything that goes along with it and how it crosses every subject area and even into just social emotional development through clubs and camp. And everybody's included in those clubs and camps. So it's just been wonderful, and it wouldn't happen if it weren't driven by these two. And I mean, they hound me and follow me around the building, and I'll tell you, it can be a Sunday night at 10 o'clock and I'll get a text from one of them of a picture of something that just sprouted in the garden, which means they're here. So they are that crazy about this project. So I just want to thank them for making this happen. It's been absolutely amazing. And thank you, kids, for being here. You did a wonderful job. Thank you, parents, for helping them and bringing them here. Thank you very much.
It's pretty exciting for us to get to see some of the things that you do during the day and to see your enthusiasm about it. I think for me, one thing that's so special about this is that it started with a passion and it grew, but then that it grew to be something the whole school can enjoy, and it's tied to the learning standards across multiple disciplines, and it seems like such a great cultural addition to the program at Gurney. And so thank you for starting it and having the passion to see it through and helping get funding for it.
So I have a very special request if the students would be interested. I have a group of booster club presidents that we meet every month. We talk about the different ways that they can support programming in our schools for students. And they asked me today if they can take a tour of Gurney Gardens. And I said, I would ask you tonight, but I want to take it one step further and see if you would do the tour for us. So would you talk to your teachers and Dr. Jones and see if there might be a day that I could bring them here and you can tell us about the garden again? Because my first experience in the garden, which I think was back in August, I got to see a caterpillar. It was super exciting. So if you could think, if you would like to do that, Dr. Jones will let me know, and you can plan a little program for us to see what their money and their efforts did. If that's okay with you. Thank you. You did an outstanding job. I'm super proud. Thank you.
Stay and listen to the rest of our meeting, but you might also have homework and dinner to get home to. So we'll give you all a few minutes for those of you that want to take off. We completely understand.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. So good. Thank you.
Moving along, could I have a motion for the approval of minutes from the March 3rd regular meeting, March 2nd regular meeting, March 5th special meeting, and March 16th regular meeting?
Second.
Ashley, does anyone have any comments? Ashley, would you please take the roll? Mrs. Rose? Yes. Mrs. Bundle?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper?
Yes.
Next, we have district advisory reports. The first committee to give us an update.
Can I just make a special request? We have a student signed up to speak tonight, and instead of making her wait the whole time through public till we get to public participation, we also let her go a little early. Would anyone have an objection to that?
No, that sounds
Vivian, is that okay with you? We let you go a little early? I think Mr. Gordon is getting everything done. If you look over the public participation language in number 7.
Would you like me to read it to you? I'll go ahead and read it now. The purpose of Board of Ed meetings is for the board to conduct its business. Board meetings are held in public, but are not public forums. The discussion of agenda items is intended to be among board members, not a discussion of the public. The public participation section of the agenda is an opportunity for citizens to address the board. Community members who contacted the superintendents in advance of the meeting may be provided an opportunity to speak first. Public comment is limited to 30 minutes. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak. No person may speak twice until all who desire to speak have the opportunity to do so. Remember, this is a formal and official meeting of the board, and what you say becomes part of the official meeting of the board. If your comment involves a problem with a student, employee, or board member, please do not address them by name. Keep in mind we are meeting in a schoolhouse and possibly in the presence of students. Following your public comment, if you have specific questions, please email the superintendent at jennifer.wizarski@schools.org. And now we would love to hear what you have to share with us.
I'm Vivian Self, and I'm a student at Gunny Elementary. To talk about the benefits of recycling and why the district should recycle. First, recycling helps stop pollution and greenhouse gases. Unrecycled materials that carry liquids pollute the ground by releasing dangerous chemicals onto the ground. Once these chemicals build up, they can cause cancer. Recycling can also improve water and air quality. Many things we use at schools are recyclable, such as paper, plastic, glass, and aluminum. When I came to Chagrin Falls schools, I was surprised to find that the school wasn't recycling. Several months later, I asked teachers, friends, family, and others why there wasn't any recycling. A little later, I learned that there was recycling before COVID, but stopped once COVID hit. I looked into it and thought, COVID is much better now. Maybe it should reopen. And that's how I'm here. I talked with the Chagrin Environmental Club advisor and the president, and they said they agree and thought recycling should continue again in the schools. But we still have some problems. 1, getting enough helpers, and 2, we have to educate people about recycling. We can fix those problems by starting environmental clubs at each building who can help and teach others how and what to recycle. If we can learn subtraction, I'm pretty sure we can learn how to recycle. But we still need your support for this to work. So I strongly urge you to support recycling in the district by providing recycling bins in classrooms and cafeterias throughout the district. Work with the trash collection company to remove the recycling and encourage education about recycling in the district. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Vivian, I heard you were going to speak tonight, and I heard also that we used to have a recycling program. And if you look to the back of the road, there is Mr. Woofter. Can you raise your hand? I spoke with him today. He's our director of operations and facilities maintenance. And what I thought maybe we could do is schedule a meeting at the central office where you and your mom can come and meet Mr. Woofter and talk about some ideas that you have, and maybe we can find some ways to try to bring recycling back to the entire district. Does that sound okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, and I have your mom's contact information, so we'll try to do that sometimes. Sound like a plan?
Yep.
Okay, this is great to have you speak tonight. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Tomorrow too, right? So if you'd like to leave, you're more than welcome.
And I'm excited to see that we may have a future debater.
All right, back to district advisory report. We have an update from technology. Robert, no, Lauren.
That was me, yeah. So we met with the technology committee. We talked a little bit about the existing procedure for the technology committee, some things that were good about that, some things we maybe wanted to improve. And we also talked a lot about the website. We got a little sneaky peek of what the website is going to look like launching over the summer. There's sort of a lot of layers of discontent that people have with the website from a user perspective and from administrator perspective, and it seems like all of those are being addressed and the new website looks amazing. So we have that to look forward to in a few months.
Okay, policy committee. Should I give you a time limit?
You might need to give me a time limit. So we've met 4 times, I think. Yeah, 4 times since the last meeting. The first time we had OSBA come in to make a presentation to talk about what they offer and to see whether we're availing ourselves of all the services. Basically, right now we get the PDQ from them, and we were updating internally based on the PDQ. We then met 3 more times. We're identifying that I think the goals, if we've laid out 3 goals, it's that we're compliant, which I think we're doing a good job of being compliant, that we are efficient. And I'm not so sure about efficiency because, it took us about 10 hours to do 2 policies, and that we're sustainable. And that's where we're really tripped up here, because if something happens to somebody on the committee, or if there's a change, there's a lot of knowledge that's lost. So the next step is Jennifer's talking to Neola. They're going to come and make a presentation, and we're going to take a look at what they can offer, how that differs, line that up against what we're spending as far as sending things out for council, because we're sending a lot more things out for council than we used to, because we have some gaps, looking at efficiency and how many people are working on the policy documents, because it's not just what we do in the committee, then it flows out to all the different buildings, all the different the contracts, the manuals, the things the kids sign. So we're taking a look at final forms. We're going to be sending those out for review. Just to not, the goal in the short term is not necessarily to clean them up completely, because that is a huge project, but certainly to make sure that we're compliant for next year, and then to try to deal with some of the overlap. As a parent, I think you probably know, we're signing a lot of forms, and a lot of those forms look like they're duplicative or redundant. So we're taking a look at that. And then as far as specific policies for this week, the 2 biggies were attendance, which has implications, and we needed to get it done for today because we need to have 2 readings before it can go into the final forms for the kids to sign. So attendance policies have changed slightly, and educational options, which touches upon credit flex, CCP, how those things are funded, what our obligations are, and how kids test into those programs have changed and been updated. And then there's some issues about licenses and some other things that'll come up that were just full replacements or adds to policy. So we will not be meeting again, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, but we'll be getting our next step will be to bring in Neola and take a look at how that lines up with what we're doing. And we'll keep you posted.
We have a process that we're comfortable with and confident that gaps and things aren't.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time figuring out naming conventions and how we would pull through changes, because we don't get the original language from OSBA unless there's an update. And then we don't get the changes that have been made to OSBA unless we go back, that language, unless we go back through manually and try to pull up all those changes that have been made over the years. So we've got a naming convention, we've got a new process, we've got that under control, but we're still trying to look for some efficiencies and some sustainability.
Thank you, and thank you also for standing up for
The Inter-Council, we viewed the innovation lab at the intermediate school, which was very interesting. We had students present and walk us through and show us what they do in the lab. It was very helpful. We talked about the fact that, or at the middle school, we talked about the fact that at the intermediate school, for next year, we're going to be rolling out a new innovation lab there, and are bringing someone in to run that and doing that from the ground up with curriculum. And then we'll be looking for grants to enhance what we offer there for the students. So.
Great. Anyone else have any comments? All right, at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Jennifer for the superintendent's reports.
I'm going to pass my section over to Becky Quinn, who's the Director of Curriculum and District Gifted Coordinator, to present the K-12 Physical Education Review, as well as the K-12 review.
you, Dr. Penzarski. Certainly difficult to follow that bunch of high achieving children that were cute as a button. I'll try my best. So I appreciate the opportunity to share with you this evening the work that we have done across K-12 physical education this year. Through this presentation, you will see our commitment to maximizing the potential of all students and our attention to our identified district priorities. The first step in K-12 content area curriculum review and refinement is for our district to assemble a K-12 committee comprised of teachers from each level and course within the content. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the teachers on this slide who are our district staff that served on this committee in the 21-22 school year. So why was review and refinement needed in PE? While the Ohio Department of Education standards have not recently changed, we review all content areas on a district cycle to ensure that teaching and learning is relevant and that instructional resources continue to meet the needs of our students. This provides an opportunity to make sure we're responsive to the changing needs and interests of our students. And it affords the opportunity to allow us to review and refine course offerings in the content area. So what was our work this year? We reviewed the K-12 Ohio Department of Education PE standards, the expectations of the existing ODE evaluations, which are banded by grade levels, and the existing district PE curriculum maps. We determined how PE 712 content can be provided in ways to most appropriately meet the interests and needs of students within newly proposed courses, one of which was presented to the board in December of 2021 for implementation in the 22-23 school year at Chagrin Falls Middle School, Intro to Personal Fitness. As a part of this work, I compiled and shared an overview of all the high-performing schools across the state and their PE electives so that we kind of would have an informed view of what other schools like us might be offering to students. CFHS has expressed interest in proposing 2 new PE electives, which will be presented to the board by December of 2022 for implementation in the 23-24 school year. So we're excited to see what the PE department proposes. Much of our work this year in PE was to identify new ways to engage students and identify needs related to how the standards are taught, including the replacement of existing resources, the identification of additional specialized resources to better accommodate the needs of some of our students with disabilities in PE classes, and the identification of new resources to maximize new learning spaces and/or provide interdisciplinary instruction that connects PE to other content areas. A perfect example of that is actually here at Gurney. Mr. Cannon, the PE teacher, requested the purchase of compasses and orienteering and mapping games for use in the PE classes here at Gurney. This piggybacks on the social studies geography standards while also maximizing new outdoor learning spaces here at Gurney and the use of the trails that are available. So it's kind of exciting. Through our work this year, needs and gaps were identified and resources to meet these needs have been identified and ordered. Now through the 22-23 school year, we will begin updating PE curriculum maps to include the use of these new resources and develop a new curriculum map for our new course at the middle school. So how did we do this work? Well, we of course used our district PD days in September and November, and then scheduled smaller group or individual meetings with teachers to work on course specific or level specific items. As I mentioned, we identified a need for additional high school PE courses to meet the changing interests and needs of our students. We will use student interest data as we start to identify as a high school group what courses we might propose for the following school year. So we're excited to kind of gather that work. And finally, what were our products of our work this year? We completed a K12 PE gap analysis to identify new resources and needs. We identified the new supplemental resources, including those new games I talked about, new versions of equipment that just over the course of 5 to 6 years needs to be replaced. We found new resources purchased to support instruction that weren't available the last time that we purchased materials. And we replaced items and we made refinements to our curriculum maps. We've started that work and that will continue into the 22-23 school year, and with the eventual hope that all of those will be posted to our curriculum map website. So were there any questions related to PE?
Now that we've adopted the PE waiver at the high school, are we still offering summer gym, or is there a need for it?
That was offered through community ed. I don't believe that it's offered this summer, but I could double check that. Any other questions? Okay. Now we'll transition to K12 Health. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to tell you about our work in K12 Health this school year. Through this presentation again, you'll also see our commitment to maximizing the potential of all students and our attention to our district priorities. So now why was K12, why was there a K12 review and refinement needed in health? Well, we keep on top of the ongoing Ohio Department of Education mandates each school year, and we've identified additional content and resources needed to provide instruction relative to those requirements since our last year of review, which was in the 2015-16 school year. We review all content areas on that district cycle that I talked about when we discussed PE, because we want to make sure that learning is relevant and that all instructional resources continue to meet the needs of our students. Since there are no Ohio Department of Education standards in health, we use the national health standards to guide our district work. Ohio law does not permit the State Board of Education to adopt health education standards in Ohio. However, Ohio law does direct schools and districts to include health education and other related topics at various times throughout the K-12 curriculum. Our current 2016 health course of study was built upon the national health standards, which have not changed since 2016. Thus, much of our work this year was not really to modify what is being taught, but more so where it's being taught. For instance, what grade level, what course, and how, what resources, what websites. Some of the links that we had posted in the 2016 course of study obviously were no longer working because so much time had passed. So updating things. As you can see in our current 2016 course of study and with the proposed 2022 course of study that's before the board this evening, the K-6 standards are taught by a multitude of staff. We don't have health teachers that are specific, just health teachers in K-6. So we share the responsibilities. There's a multitude of staff with a variety of teacher roles, and we all know that teacher roles change from year to year and schedules change over time. Thus, a year of review and refinement allows us to think through how our current staff and schedules can best support these instructional responsibilities. The year of health review and refinement also provided an opportunity for us to work with Marty Jacobson to review our wellness policy. So again, the first step in our area of content review and refinement is to assemble our committee. It's a much larger committee, as you can see reflected on this slide. So a big thanks goes out to all of them. While you can see that we do have health that's taught at the middle school and high school, those are specific teachers within that list. You see a variety of familiar names across K-6, including our PE teachers, our guidance counselors, grade level teachers, and science teachers at the intermediate school, because it is spread across multiple disciplines. If something is being taught within a certain course, we try to merge it with the national standard that kind of correlates with it. So what was our work this year? Again, to make sure that we were following all of the ODE mandates and requirements related to health, having the opportunity to review our district wellness policy and to refine and update our course of study. We determined how new 712 content could be provided within existing health courses, refined pacing to include new content. As I mentioned, this was really limited to what was ODE mandated this year. You might remember it occurred actually over the summer that there was a requirement to include instruction on the effects of vaping within our curriculum for this current school year. So that was a relatively easy fix that we merged it anytime there was instruction relating to tobacco, that instruction was also provided. We also determined how new K6 fits within current K6 science, K6 PE, K6 guidance, and or the K3 social studies standards, and identify how content in each grade level will be presented through those courses. We updated links to resources throughout the course of study and included the use of additional resources that have become newly available since 2016. We updated the district's 2016 course of study to create the 2022 course of study that is also linked here. So if anyone in the audience wants to view it, it is for public view. You can see the different links to different resources that are available. It's kind of a lengthy document because it is K12. It reflects the slight changes to content, grade level courses, the method of instruction, use of a variety of resources. K6 committee teachers and I will serve as resources to new teachers that move grade levels, move content areas, who will pick up those health standards relative to new teaching assignments over time. So how did we accomplish this work? We used our PD days again in September and November and scheduled smaller group meetings as necessary throughout the year. So what new needs were identified through this work? Well, one of these items was that we recognized a need to review the SEL curriculum mapping in the 22-23 school year following our current year of program piloting to parallel the health course of study to really possibly prompt some revisions to be proposed or maximize instructional time so there isn't a duplication of efforts that two people are teaching exactly the same thing in different courses, that we could fuse those things. We also identified a need for additional intentional instruction related to digital citizenship. This was something that was mentioned in one of the 6th grade health standards, but we realized that with the incredible use of technology by our students, that it needed to be spread over more grade levels and it needed to be very intentional. So I assembled a group that included me, Katie Gill, our literacy coach, Angie Jameson, our library media specialist, and Molly Clodar, our tech integration coach, and we began coming up with a plan, first starting with the development of some videos for students and families about safe use of technology and expanding our work into next school year. But we feel very confident that we can do a better job of helping our students in that way. Finally, what are the products of our work? Again, this updated course of study. As reflected within this course of study, you can see what we have identified as new free resources. We fixed and updated hyperlinks that were previously in the 2016 course of study. We included the use of features of existing adapted resources. For instance, we use Science Fusion and Science across K-8, and there are some resources within that program that directly correlated with what we needed in health. We linked relevant access to additional resources like Brain Pop that's used across the district and new resources like Healthy Habits for Healthy Kids books for our K6 PE teachers. Within the updated course of study, you can also see some minimal shifts of instruction from one level in 2016 to another in the 2022 course of study. For example, standards 5 and 6 in 4th grade and standard 2 in science were moved to science when body systems are actually taught. And there were removal of duplicated efforts. The removal of the 2016 8th grade standard 5 was removed because it's also addressed again in high school health, and it's a semester-long course in the high school relative to it just being a quarterly course in the middle school. So we made some of those minor shifts as well. The K12 Health Committee served as the wellness committee for the district to perform the triennial assessment of the student wellness program, which is required by the USDA. The Wellness Committee reviewed it with Marty Jacobson and discussed the current student wellness program, and no recommendations for changes to the program were proposed by the committee at this time. And so, are there questions?
The digital citizenship part that you talked about, is that being implemented grade 6 and up, or is that
So
throughout?
we're looking at it across K12 because we realize that just teaching digital citizenship in 6th grade is not necessarily, which is not to say that it hasn't been taught, it just wasn't specifically called out in the health course of study. But we just feel like, we've had Chromebooks for quite a while, but technology use has changed even since 2016. And so that we just really need to give attention to that. And Mike Doherty also agreed with that. He supported that as well. So we just need to take another look at that. At one time we had tech teachers that all they taught was technology and how to use different pieces of technology and programs and that type of thing. But with the shift to Chromebooks and one-to-one, it kind of just became daily life that we use it all day long and in different ways. So just kind of thinking about things in a different way and making sure that any gaps are filled and that we're doing all that we can.
So for example, another place that we're looking to embed some of those digital citizenship skills might be through the new Encore course that was mentioned earlier at the intermediate school, through the usage of the innovation lab to increase STEM and those kinds of things. We could also embed some of those digital citizenship skills when students are doing research, because we want to also increase that skill at that level as part of that course. So we're looking at what strands line up with that course. So those are conversations that are occurring on how we can make sure that we don't miss anything.
To piggyback on that, that was exactly our conversation in that group, was that we wanted to kind of find opportunities to kind of piggyback on things that were already happening, because I can't imagine having the conversation with any teacher or any principal saying like, well, we want to teach another class on top of, we want to provide this on top of everything that the teachers are already doing. So if we can thoughtfully embed it in what they're already doing, projects that they're already doing, it will be great. So. Other question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work, and please thank everyone on your team.
They were good teams.
Moving along, do we have anyone that requested? We do. First up would be Dana Bordner, who would like to speak about Panorama.
For Vivian, that's awesome. And actually my daughter's in the garden club. She came to support her friends and she's asked Miss Gooden to do composting because we do composting. I'm like, that's another way to recycle. She brings home her apple cores to compost. So I was not going to speak. Thank you for having me, Dana Bordner. I don't know, 401 Deer Court. So I think the agenda came on line and I was kind of taken back. I have spoken through email to 4 people and have been in touch with 4 people requesting Panorama information. And I keep getting put to someone else. And it's very frustrating. And so to find out then our contract is almost $23,000 is alarming. And I want to know how we can have a seat at the table and how we can figure out maybe how to vote on this, because I'm not sure when we talked about this, or if this is a community thing. As far as Panorama goes, and according to state, there is no state law saying that Panorama cannot sell our children's information through these surveys before deleting them. So they can sell that information and then delete them. And I have talked to state representatives about this. And this is something that has come across my plate. I've done a lot of research. I've read a lot. Dr. Penzarski and I have discussed, we've had great meetings talking about a lot of things. And this is of concern to me. So every parent should opt their child out of a Panorama or any survey, and we should know about these surveys. And if we can't opt out, then maybe our board needs to have an opt-in. And if more parents knew what was going on, and if we don't know about these surveys, I'm talking in circles because I am very frustrated. And we care about this school. We moved back here 3.5 years ago to be a part of this community because we loved it. We knew what we were getting in for, and education is always number one, not all the fluff. And I don't want to see that come down the pipeline, and I don't want my kids being used. So I don't know how we can have a seat at the table as parents to work with teachers. And like I said, I found it ironic, I guess, that Panorama was on the agenda, and I've asked 4 different people for that information and couldn't get it, whether the previous contract or the current. So that is all. And I would love to follow up and meet with any of you. My husband would too. So thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer, is there anything else? I just want to respond real quick about the not getting it to you. That's on me. I was with ODE all day today with a federal grant audit. So when it was provided to me, I just haven't gotten to it today. I just was too busy. And it was just last week or early this week that it was requested that I got the email. So I do apologize. You are on my list, I promise. And I didn't see it until, it hit here too. Those will have to come through me. That's not something that I would have access to without obtaining it from. So. Yeah.
I'm gonna follow up with Dana, because I just want to make sure that I understand, because I didn't understand to get the contract to you. That's what I was supposed to do out of our meeting. Okay, I just want to make sure that it's like, because we met, I think on the 11th, so I'll follow up with you anyway.
All right, great, thank you. Let's see. Moving along to consent agenda items. Do I have a motion? We have one more. Sorry, we have one more. Oh, sorry, we have another one. Gary Welch. Gary, would you like to speak?
Gary Welch. I live on South Main Street. I'm a community member. Wow, after seeing the Gurney staff and the students, I don't really have very much to say. I know watching the news tonight, I saw all these terrible things about public schools, how they're corrupt and they're weak and the results are bad and the adults have bad motivation. It's pretty scary. Tonight, I got to see the real world of our school, which is the one I care about. And it was really inspirational to see how the students and the staff took ideas and ran with them. And they used science and math and finance and decision-making and all kinds of skills. And it was really a wonderful thing to say. And when I see the news talking about all the problems of public schools, it's not really going to be scary because I was here tonight. And I'm also glad that there's a forum so that when good questions like this come up about things that are going on, that they can be addressed, and I'll be interested to see what comes of that as well.
Thanks, Gary. Ashley, is there anyone else? No, that was it. Could I have a motion for consent agenda items A through AD, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Does anyone have any questions or comments? Take the roll.
Mrs. Rose.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schulfer.
Yes.
Could I have a motion for superintendent's recommendations A through R, please? So moved. And a second?
I'll second.
Jennifer, would you like to
I'm
walk-
sorry. Who made the motion?
I did. Jennifer, would you like to walk us through these?
Sure, I know these agendas are pretty lengthy, so I will try to walk you through all the letters. Letter A through letter D. Those are current personnel that we are moving to resignation or to retirement. So Cindy, Joe, Nate, and Lauren are great employees. We appreciate all their service to the district, but most importantly, these people have made a real difference in the lives of our students, and we're really sad to lose them. But we have some really big shoes to fill, and we wish them the best of luck. Letter E is open enrollment for the next school year. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you need more information, I know it's available on the website, or you can always call central office. G and H are general housekeeping resolutions that are done every year. I through K, these are contracts for teachers. For example, teachers who are up for any type of contract, there's different ones. The letter L would be any non-teaching staff member, non-certified contracts for the 22-23 school year. Letter M is the resolution following the law that we have to recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. And this one would be for all 260 employees. N would be the first reading of the updates to the policies that Lori discussed in the policy committee. And you can see what the titles are under those that changed. Most of those had wording changes based on a new law or something in the administrative code. O would be the contracts for what we're doing with the strategic planning. And the next step of the strategic planning will be the community engagement roundtables. I know the titles change all the time. These will be done in the month of May. There'll be signups and one can participate. We'll put that communication out via the website, constant contact email, and all of social media. I'll touch base with a couple people that say they don't get the communication. You can help me make sure that all of that gets out where it needs to be. P and Q are facility upgrades, which are part of the capital planning committee. So if you have any questions on P and Q, I have Chris here tonight, thankfully, because some of those are complicated. And then R would be, this is the OC contract. So about every 2 to 3 years, we negotiate with our classified OC staff. And this is a labor contract. So who's in OC? That would be our aides, bus drivers, helpers, mechanics, cooks, administrative assistants, custodians, grounds, and maintenance workers. And so I will tell you from personal experience, I knew these team members were outstanding. I've negotiated with teams for 17 years. And I just want to say that this team walked in focused and wanted to work together to solve problems. That was what the whole negotiation was about. And they wanted to make things better for Chagrin Falls, for not only their people, but also for the district. And I've never been in a negotiation that was about problem solving in language. It was just an amazing experience. We did all of the negotiations in 3 days. Ashley and Robert were part of those negotiations. I don't know if they want to share everything. Financially, everything was in line with what's going on around us. And I think it was reasonable. It's within our financial plan. And just super proud of everything that came out of it, as well as the overall experience. So very happy to work with this association.
I agree. I've been through a few of these before and it was very positive, collaborative. It was a great, really pleasant experience for 3 days of negotiations. Sometimes you say you have negotiations and it's like, and it was not like that at all. It was great.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And I've been on the other side of the table as a teacher, as a principal, in a number of different spaces, and it was just extraordinarily collaborative. I've spoken to colleagues in my professional work that said they couldn't believe we did it in 3 days. So extremely positive, and everybody was very pleased with the results.
Thank you all for that work. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Ashley, would you please take the roll? Mrs. Rose? Yes. Mrs. Bendel?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller? Yes. Dr. Schlepper?
Yes.
Could I have a motion for treasurer's recommendations A through P?
A second.
I believe that you walk us through anything. Yeah, first item is the tax rate resolution. Typically, you would see this in March. There is a deadline in the law that these have to be filed with the county by a certain date. The county actually was behind this year, so they requested an extension. So it is later than what the law typically requires, but we're still within the law. They requested the extension. They provided the resolution, as is their role. And then just to point out, there's some fluctuation in the bond rate. There always is. That's just how bond rates work based on what our needed amounts would be to make the debt payments for the year. So if you're trying to compare to last year, you're going to see that the bond rate actually went down a little bit, about $500,000 it went down. So just so everybody understands that does fluctuate from year to year. Item B is the medical mutual renewal contract. No changes in any of this except for what is required on some of the forms that we have to sign. I think there's one additional that we didn't have in the past. Item C is a then and now certificate for the Riley Law Firm for some legal work on some of the HVAC projects. Work needed to get done, didn't necessarily have time to wait for the PO to get through the process. They didn't want to slow that process up, so they went ahead and got those done. Item D is a donation from Bruce and Cynthia Paycheck in the amount of in the value of $480 and a memorial tree for the 712 campus. And then item E is financial reports. And I know it's been a while since I've actually presented anything here, so I want to thank all of you, everybody in central office, all of the community for having patience with me as I have had a pretty tough year. And I fell behind and I'm now pretty much caught up. So I have some actual numbers for you here tonight. Okay, and when I do these on my screen, it's right in front of me. It's very large and it looks like I can actually read it. So it would make more sense for you to actually look at your screen. The actual reports are attached to the agenda. The one thing I want to point out on here, if you're looking at the revenue, I gotta get to it myself. If you're looking at the revenue, on the foundation revenue, which is line 1.035. If you're looking at January, you're going to see an anomaly there. You're going to see we go from about $125,000 a month to $516,000 in January. That is where the new state formula actually hit the system. So it passed, there was all this excitement and it was, yay, we're being funded on the new formula. We didn't actually start getting funded on the new formula until January. So that is in January, all of the months leading up to that, that's where they made that payment and said, okay, here we're caught up now. You'll also see, if you're looking at the detail, it doesn't show it right there. It's not broken out there. That's the total. But when you dig in a little deeper, which I don't have on the slideshow, but I do have in the reports, things are going to look a little bit different on that state revenue and how things are reported. You're going to see more now in restricted. So they're moving gifted funding. What else did they move? The student wellness and success, that when that first passed, that was in a state grant fund. That's in the general fund now. And it's restricted funding. So that shows up down in 1.04 instead of 1.035. So you're going to see some fluctuations between those lines. You'll also see, if you're digging into the detail in line 1.04 in this restricted, you're going to see some negative numbers. Again, not on here, but when you dig into it a little deeper into the detail, you'll see some negative numbers on the economic disadvantage funding and then on the career tech funding. That's them writing where things were, because it used to be up into, there was a small portion of it pulled out into restricted. Now, in order to correct it and to change it onto their new formula, they have to make a negative adjustment every month for the remainder of the year, which actually is going to make that entire line negative on that account, because they're taking out more than we received in that line, but it's because we received it in another line. So it's complicated, but just bear with me, and once we get through this year, it'll start looking a little bit more understandable. The other thing that happened in that January number is there's $53,000 of casino revenue. So that kind of puts that, increases that line a little bit. We get that twice a year in August and January. More than I really planned on covering all the revenue, sorry. Sidetrack there. Okay, this is just a picture again on still talking revenue. This is the month-to-month comparison. I like to just kind of show that things are, we tend to get our money in the same months because of the tax revenues. That's where, the most of our money comes from. So you can see those fluctuations. I just kind of like to show that we're in line with previous years. And then over to the right there is the total comparison of the total revenue. So you can see our revenue is up at the end of February. This is through February. Same thing on the expenditure side. Again, I like to compare to prior years just to show, our revenue is very cyclical. Our expenditures are a little bit more stable. You see that big cut there from 20 to 21. We all are aware of, the cuts that we made there. And then we are up a little bit in 21 to 22. That is expected. Typically, we expect expenditures to go up a little bit every year just due to raises and inflation and things like that. It's a picture of our cash balance. This is year over year. The orange line there is current year. And then the gray lines are the 3 previous years. And again, just showing how cyclical our cash is. We are up right now. We're at the beginning of the levy cycle. That's expected, and then toward the end of the levy cycle, that line would come lower, and that is how we expect things to work out. This is a picture of the self-insurance fund since the implementation of it, which was last January. So we've got a whole year under our belt now. I could not be happier with the way this line looks. This is exactly what we intended. A lot of it is just luck in how how our claims come in, but this is what we expected to happen, and this is we're where we need to be right now. That balance, we're at just a little over $1.2 million in that fund, and that's what we use to pay our claims. So we have a healthy balance now. That's where we want it to be. That's where it should be after about a year of operation. And we want it to kind of hover around there going forward. I wouldn't expect it to get too much higher. And hopefully it doesn't get too much lower, because we have to maintain a certain amount in that reserve fund. So right now, I'm really happy with that. I think it looks great. We definitely made the right decision on moving to self-insurance.
A little bit of luck, but also smart utilization of our.
Absolutely, educating the staff about how the self-insurance even works, getting people to make smarter decisions, be smarter consumers, with the understanding that the healthier that balance is, the lower our increases will be in the future, and then that saves the district money as well as every employee because their contributions will be lower too. Absolutely. Okay, moving on to just a summary of all funds. Nothing really exciting to point out here. A few negative numbers on there that we would expect. That bold column, the 1, 2, 3, 4th column of numbers over there is the cash fund balance. There are a few negative numbers in there. We do expect those. Food service, the 300 district managed activity, that's the athletics. Those are things that we do plan to make transfers at the end of the year to cover those negative balances. If we let them run into the negative, then we are it's easier to call out how much the general fund is actually supporting those funds. And then any of the funds that start with a 5, those 500 funds, those are all federal grants. And just as a reminder, we spend that money first, then request it back from the feds and we get that money back. So those are expected to run in the negative as well. And then just the bank reconciliation from February. If you're somebody who follows these and actually looks at these, you'll notice the adjustments down on the left-hand side at the bottom there, those other bank adjustments. There are more than there typically are. A normal month, you'll see about 3 of those. The first one, the SCRS insufficient, that one is, you'll see that every month. That's basically because when ODE sends us our money, they actually take out more than they send us. So then at the end of the month, I have to ACH money to them. It doesn't happen until after month end. So that's always a carrying item. Those 2 smaller SCRS and SERS, and then the last number down there, that 94,000 or 95,000 on payroll. That's just because it was February. We have a shorter amount of time. The month ends on 28th. The payroll is on the 28th. Some of those things didn't actually hit the bank and go through until after the 28th. So those are just carrying items. And this is a quick picture of where all of our money is. As usual, the State Treasury Asset Reserve Fund is where we're holding most of our money. That's the Star Ohio. I would like to point out though that estimated yield there on Star Ohio has been 0.1 for like ever, and it went up to 0.15. So yay. And that is all I have. And then in the actual reports, I don't have it here on the slides, but in the actual reports is the report from Red Tree on where all of our invested money with them is. We have about 4 million with them. So if you want to see the actual funds and CUSIP numbers and all that kind of stuff, it's in there as well. That, I'm recommending your approval. Mrs. Gross.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Does anyone have any other business? Our next meeting will be a work session on Wednesday, May 4th at 5:30 in the Sands Community Room, followed by our regular meeting on Wednesday, May 18th at 7 o'clock in the high school library. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Nobody wants to leave?
Second.
Ashley, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Rose.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
All right, thank you all for coming.